Did everyone hear that? Recording in progress. And what does that mean? The January meeting of the Haverford Planning Commission is called to order because recording is in progress. Welcome everybody to our first meeting of the new year. I'm Todd Bresley, I'm the chair of the Planning Commission, and we're so glad that you are all here with us tonight. We have a busy agenda tonight. I'm going to review it really quickly. We have a little bit of housekeeping to do, which is to welcome a couple of new members of the Planning Commission tonight and elect our officers for the coming year. That'll take a few minutes. The major item of business tonight is to discuss the preliminary and final plan submission for 230 Haverford Avenue. And then we also have a zoning issue, which we have on our agenda if we have time to discuss it. An ordinance related to allowing mixed use in multifamily buildings in the 5A zone. And then finally, public comment. And I do know Adam Rosenzweig of Axiom, which is developing the property at 650 Montgomery Avenue, has come to speak during public comment about a topic related to his project. And I'd like to ask for those who are here to listen to 230, to participate in the conversation about 230 Haverford, if you wouldn't mind if we let Adam speak first. It shouldn't take more than about 10 minutes. We'll put that part of the public comment first and then revert to the order of our agenda. So we'll begin with my update, which really is, in addition to our new members, I just want to report to the public and the Planning Commission that in mid-December I sent a report to Borough Council about our activities in the fall of 2023. Just a kind of quick summary of the actions the Planning Commission had, the topics we've been working on, the actions we took, along with some documentation related to that. So that is available on the website under the Planning Commission records. So that's accessible to anyone who would like to see that. I'd like to move then to welcome of new Planning Commission appointees. We have two new Planning Commissioners today. One is a familiar face, Jennifer Ancone, who's been an alternate, and it just goes to show if you're an alternate, then you become a real member. We've appreciated your participation for the last year, and I'm glad that you've been appointed to a vacancy so that you can hit the ground running. And so welcome back in a new position. And we have a brand new Planning Commissioner tonight, Aaron Graves. And Aaron, would you like to say a few words and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, thank you. Hey everybody, Aaron Graves. Been a Haverford resident for 7 years and in commercial real estate and finance for 17 years in my career. Very passionate about this community and happy to serve. Thank you.
Did you say what block you lived on? It's important for us to know.
200 block of Forest Ave.
Okay. Which is a happening block. Apparently, yeah. Okay, well, welcome, Aaron. I'm really glad. Aaron and I had a chance to chat over in December, and I'm really glad that that you have decided that using your talents and skills and knowledge and betterment of our community is what you want to be doing right now. We could certainly use the kind of expertise you have. I don't know if you've noticed, we have a lot of architects on our commission, and now we have someone who's on the other side of the equation, so we'll appreciate hearing from you and hearing different thoughts about our projects. So thank you for being here. We will then move to election of officers. We have 3 officers, a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary that we nominate and elect for 1-year terms. And so we can open the floor to nominations for officers for 2024. Would anyone like to make nominations? Jennifer?
I would like to nominate 3, Commissioner Bresley as chair, Terween as chair, Commissioner Crum as vice chair, and Commissioner Iannacone as secretary.
Thank you. Adam, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay, and I will accept the nomination as well. Is there a second to the nomination?
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for officers that anyone would like to make? Okay, that being the case, then we'll vote on the nomination of me, Todd Bressley, to be the chair for 2024, for Adam Crom to be the vice chair for 2024, and for Jennifer to be the secretary for 2024. All in favor of the officers, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it is unanimously voted that we will serve as the officers. And that comes with a pay bonus, by the way.
What percentage of
100% of our base pay. Can you list down that?
200, let's not vote for 200.
Okay, so let's move on then to are there any other, by the way, announcements or updates? So Tim, do you have anything you'd like to report from the county?
Just for the active transportation plan, we're at 900 people that have responded to the survey that's out there. Narberth has was kind enough to use the Narberth email to send it out to everybody in town. So you guys Narberth has been one of the big responders to it. We're working on getting some of the folks out in Western and Lower Marion to give us some information of how they utilize active transportation for the survey. But we should be wrapping up the survey in end of January and starting to move towards like more engagement, more interpersonal engagement, and laying out plans for the plan itself. So.
Okay. Will the results of the survey be made public before the plan is finished?
Yes.
And how will folks learn about that?
We just need to figure out how, because Lower Marion is the one operating the survey. So we just need to figure out how they want to publish it to their website. So.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for keeping us posted about that. So if you haven't participated in this survey, you have another month or so to do it. It's all about how we get around Narberth, biking, walking, driving, transiting, and it's important for you to respond. So the committee that's working on this plan can come up with recommendations that best serve us. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so we'll move then to the items on our agenda, and with everyone's forbearance, I'd like to move to public comment to allow Adam Rosenzweig to discuss 650 meetinghouse, 650 Montgomery. And some of the issues that have arisen in relation to signage. And what I've asked, just so the commissioners know, Kevin and Adam have been discussing some issues related to the signage code and how it applies to Adam's development, which may require variances or adjustments to the code. And I thought it would be important for Adam to come brief the commission about the issues that he's trying to work out.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Commissioner. What we're discussing here in the code relates to the definition of signs. There's two definitions that we're looking at. One is a band sign and one is a wall sign. And the band sign is how we're interpreting it, is that a typical channel letter on a raceway, and that each storefront is allowed one band sign. Per your code, we chopped our storefronts up. They can't be more than 30 feet in width, so we classified each of these as a storefront, and per our plans and elevations, we put signage over top of each proposed storefront. Then we also have, in the back here, you can see signage on the back of the stores as well. I'll call it the back facing the parking lot. Again, we have to put it on meetinghouse, and then we're putting it on the back facing because no retailer is going to come without a sign there. And we're considering those, I guess, wall signs. But we're not looking to put a standard box sign on our property. We don't think that's aesthetically pleasing. We'd like to put another set of channel letters on a raceway, also facing inside of the parking lot, but then it comes to the question of which is your storefront. And it's sort of like a circular reference. Now, we do have one issue, which is the corner tenant has 3 storefront sides, which that may need a variance, but in terms of the meeting house and the parking lot side, we're asking for further clarification on our ability to put a band sign on each side of the storefront. Right. And we did a calculation. This is what we've actually sent out to our prospective tenants. This lays it out based on your code. It has the allowable side sign width based on the storefront width. It's all a metric that boils down to what they can put in size and height and so on and so forth.
To elaborate, Adam's asking for band signs, and the code, kind of the technical issue is that businesses are permitted 1 band sign for each first-story facade. And as facades defined, it needs to face a street. So kind of those back businesses facing not a street, technically aren't even required to have a sign. It's just the way the facade definition is written. It needs to be on the primary frontage line, which has to be parallel to a street. So technically, Citizens Bank could get 2, and all of the ones along Meeting House could get 1. But I guess the third sign on Citizens Bank and kind of those back ones facing the parking lot technically aren't a facade. So they're not allowed to have any signage.
How do you get into the stores?
From the parking lot. They'll have doors because they have to. And some of the tenants that we have will use these, but Citizens Bank is not going to be using this door. You know, it's a 1-tenant door right here.
Yeah.
The Intercare will have access here as an emergency access only, not as a primary, secondary. Again, it's up here. These 3 tenants that we're talking to, 2 of them will have doors facing, 1 of them will use the main entrance.
So if I understand correctly, the issue is that the side of the building which faces the parking lot would not be permitted to have signs.
What I think kind of the issue is there's 2. One is wall sign and band signs are kind of the same in terms of, they're very close in how they are designed. However, there's no extra design standards for wall signs, but there are for band signs. So wall you get 1 per building or 2 per corner. Band signs gives you 1, 2, 3, 11 different design standards. And that's where they reference all businesses are permitted 1 band sign on each first-story facade. And a facade needs to face the primary frontage line. You can have 2 primary frontage lines, I guess 3 if you're on a corner of 3 streets. But there's no, that back wall, whatever you want to call it, it's not defined as a facade.
And are we over
You disagree, I know that.
Well, apart from how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, what's the downside?
I don't think there is a downside, and I actually brought up the issue that I think this is gonna come up for Tim's project and other commercial projects that have 2 sides of
right.
Two-sided
Yeah.
Right.
Right. I personally really don't care how many angels can dance on the head of a band sign.
Okay.
And I would be inclined to welcome the highest quality signs you feel comfortable providing.
Oh, and it will be Channel Letters Raceway. That's our standard.
And for that.
I don't want to put up a wall sign or a panel box sign. We don't want to do that.
So how can this get resolved in this case? Do we need to, is it a variance? What is it?
Redefine facade again, or just change 605D1.
But I guess the one process might be a variance, another process might be a slight code amendment, which would allow for signs to be in the back of it.
Well, can you do that after the fact in a project like this or going forward?
Well, I don't know about how that process works. We can leave that up to the solicitor. I asked Adam, the planner guy, I just wanted to take your temperature and whether you were open to this idea. And then if you are open to it, then we can, Kevin and the solicitor and Adam's team can work out the path. I just substantively was curious to know whether planning commissioners felt that what Adam wants to achieve is, you would like to support what he'd like to achieve, and then they can work that together. Yeah.
I would like to argue that the parking lot side is a primary facade, similar to the shops at Penn Valley, where they had two on Montgomery Avenue, across from the lava.
Right.
So is that you're supportive of?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So the remedy then is to say that facades that face parking lots are considered,
Like I said, I'm not sure what the actual technical remedy is. We can let Kevin in.
but, well, for this project, but you said it was gonna come up again. If there was a code amendment to prevent it from coming up again, there should be some kind of clarification for parking lots there. Right?
Mm-hmm. Do you see this applying to your properties at all? What are the issues? What are the circumstances you would need?
I would want to get through it with Kevin because I'd probably leave stuff out. It's the first that I'm hearing about it. But my guess is that we have any combination of things. We have commercial retail that faces the parking lot. We've got corners with 2 facades where the plaza is. So it's definitely going to come wrong.
Yeah, and it didn't come up until we got to this point.
Right.
Applying to the sign permit.
Yeah, we're just haven't crossed this bridge yet.
Right.
In addition to Adam and Tim's proposals, where they're both facing, they have a facade or not a facade facing the parking lot. Tim does have that plaza side that's also not gonna be facing a parking garage, we might want to cover that too while we're doing it. If we're-
That sort of gets done in the corner, right? I mean, because technically Montgomery Avenue is our primary frontage street too.
It is.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
so it sounds like the planning commission is open to some flexibility about the placement of these signs when, you know, for all intents and purposes, the main entrance just right front isn't exactly on the primary
Right.
frontage, whether it's a parking lot or a courtyard. What I'd like to see, is there a consensus that if Adam and Tim's team and the borough zoning officer were able to come up with a fix to that would solve these problems, that you'd entertain that, if they came back here? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that sound okay to everyone?
We have one other concern. So separately, I believe the way we interpret the code, we can put our building signage on the top here, okay? But however, on the residential entrance, we're also showing over the residential entrance, Narva Square, whatever it says, residential, okay, Narva Square Apartments. I believe when we looked at the code, this would be considered a duplicative sign, again, not being the primary facade, and would not be allowed.
And it says first story, so he's gonna go above the first story for any signage.
Is that really a code issue or just an issue of, is that like a flaw in the code or just?
We can get a crane high enough to put it up, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. I thought when we looked at it, the frontage on Meeting House in Montgomery was allowed.
No, because it's not above, it's still above the first floor. You'd have to create a separate sign type, which
I thought.
you'd have to do some sort of box sign or wall sign.
Yeah, and these,
As the big Narberth Garden sign.
and these are, again, gonna be rear illuminated channel letters on raceways. I mean, it was nice, but.
So here the issue is the code does not allow a sign in the location where you'd like to put it.
I'll be very honest with you, I don't know exactly what it is because we haven't submitted for it yet, but I know in our preliminary discussion when we were talking about the rest of the retail tenant signs that this also came up as a concern. So we haven't had like I guess the full, I mean, you just said what it was, I guess it's above the first story.
Right.
But then it's also the secondary sign. This is facing the parking lot, this is shadowed out. This shadow out faces our parking lot here. And you know, we had something to identify the residential entrance, just like we have identifying the rest of the retail tenants.
I guess, Kevin, have you discussed this at all?
We discussed this, like the tertiary signs facing the parking lot, I guess, or sort of secondary, whatever they are. So we just we figured that out. I think based on what you want your main sign up at that third story says, there are exclusions for addresses, property names, I believe.
Right, that's what I'm saying, I believe we're allowed to
You
do
might,
this
depends
sign.
on what you submit, that might fall as one of the exceptions.
It's this sign that we believe there's an issue with. We believe we're clear on this one, it's the second one over the residential entrance.
Okay.
Facing the parking lot?
Facing the parking lot.
Saying what, Narberth Gardens, or?
It says Narva Square Apartments.
Right. If you can get some details on that.
Narva Planning Commission.
If you can get me details on the size of that and what type of sign that is, that I never looked into. I looked at the ones up on that third story.
It sounds like it's too early to pass judgment on that one because Kevin doesn't really look at it. So what I would suggest is,
We'll put together the full sign package for that then next week. You can
Yeah.
submit it for both of these then.
explore that with Kevin. If Kevin, see what Kevin's interpretation is. If it also requires an amendment to the code, just wrap it in everything else and we can look at it when it gets here.
Great.
I can't get a real bead on that one. It just sounds like it's a little preliminary at this point.
Fair enough.
But I think what you've heard is that in terms of the other issue, the first issue was openness to trying to make it work out. And so if you can figure out a way with your team and our team, Kevin, the solicitor, to make an amendment, if that's a path you'd like to choose, then
Thank you for your time and feedback and cooperation. Thanks.
okay, thanks, Adam. Nice to see you. Okay, thanks everyone for entertaining that. So we'll move out of public comment and back to land development and subdivision. 230 Haverford Avenue. So I'm not sure how, there might be some new faces here tonight. So I'd just like to describe sort of the order of operations here. The first thing we will do is we will provide the applicant's team, an opportunity to present the proposal, which is a preliminary, and we're requesting final approval of the land development. And then after that, we will take questions from the planning commission members. We'll go around, each planning commission member will have an opportunity to ask questions. Then we'll take comments from the public, or questions from the public. I see there's some members of council here, so we'll, out of deference to them, we'll ask them first if they have any comments, and then we'll go to the rest of the public to see if they have comments. And then there will be discussion with the planning commission. The overall picture is, this is, I believe, the third or fourth time you've been here, third time. But, so Tim Rubin, the applicant, and his team came twice last year, in the spring and the summer, to just give us the general outlines of the proposal. I think the proposal's evolved a little, but not significantly since then. There's some buildings have been left in, some have been left out of the application, but largely it's a similar proposal to what we've seen. I'm struggling here to find my schedule. I'm going to have to look on my computer.
Is that the schedule?
Yeah.
Of events here?
Yeah. You have
I got it in here somewhere.
I always try and print out everything, and inevitably
I print out everything too. I ran out of paper twice.
I got it.
Okay. Thank you. So in Narberth, this is a somewhat complicated public review process. This is the first time that we're actually having a formal discussion of a formal application. Typically, an application will go through two steps: a preliminary plan and a final plan. In each step, the Planning Commission and Council have an opportunity to review, and then the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, and the Council decides whether it wants to follow that recommendation or take another action. So normally there's two steps, but in this case, the applicant has asked for those two steps to be consolidated into one. Given the length of time and the amount of public discussion there's been already. So that is an issue of consideration for the Planning Commission and the Council, whether they would like to grant that request. In our work, the Planning Commission's work, we're supported by Kevin Walsh, the Borough Zoning Officer, Eric Johnson, the Borough's Borough Engineer, who've each issued reports on this application, which we'll be discussing tonight, as well as Tim Staub from the Montgomery County Planning Commission, which also reviews these applications and provides a report. So those folks will be in the conversation tonight, discussing the questions and comments that they've provided on this development. This application also has to go, there are two other steps besides what I just described to you. Because of the actions that the applicant is proposing, namely the demolition of several buildings, this project also must be reviewed by the Historical Architecture Review Board. That is on January 8th. That's scheduled for January 8th, and the HARB is what we call it, has to make a recommendation to Council, what's called a certificate of appropriateness, that the actions that are being proposed are supportive of the borough's overall goals for historic preservation, and that the any kind of modifications of historic properties meet the guidelines that we have for our historic district. So that's a second entity that will be looking at this, and that's on January 8th. The applicant is seeking approval for this development under some provisions in our zoning code that are called conditional use, which means that a council has an opportunity to request or require certain conditions of the development, which are, the range of conditions are spelled out in our code, what can be discussed. And that follows a public hearing. So in addition to these other steps, there's a public hearing. It's called a conditional use hearing, at which council hears the presentation, takes public comment, and then has a discussion with the applicant about which conditions council would like to request that the applicant meet in order to obtain approval for the development. And that is on February 15th, that conditional use hearing. Then, after the conditional use hearing occurs, on March 4th, the project will come back to the Planning Commission for a final review and a final recommendation to the Borough Council. And on March 7th, the Borough Council at its workshop meeting will hear a presentation of the plan and reports from all the hearings and meetings that have occurred. And then on March 21st, at the Borough Council's business meeting, it will vote on whether it would like to proceed with the project or under which conditions. And so this is really the first of at least 6 meetings that will occur between now and March 21st, at which the public is invited to attend and to comment before this project is approved. So that's the process, and those dates may change. It's very unlikely that they'll occur quicker than I've suggested. If they change, it may be that they would come later than I suggested. And so, excuse me, Matt, I'm sorry to call on you. How can the public follow this process and keep abreast of these dates?
Good question. I would encourage everyone to pay attention to the official borough calendar, which is on our website, narberthpa.gov.
Okay. And there's also a special area of the website which is for planning proposals, right? That's dedicated to this project?
Yeah, so all of our subdivision land development projects are posted on the website under information, projects, plans, subdivision land development, and those details can be found there, as well as meeting materials under government boards and commissions. You can find any of the official proceedings that are in the planning commission, as well as borough council.
Okay, so that's where you can look on the borough's webpage to follow information about this project as it moves through the review process. So tonight, the Planning Commission's focus is, we will hear a presentation about the project overall. Our focus will be on any recommendations we would like to make to council to consider for its conditional use hearing. Our goal tonight is to discuss any kind of conditions we would like to ask council to consider requesting of the applicant. And then when the project comes back in March, we would have a conversation more about our recommendations for the project overall. So I hope that explains the process. I will pause here because again, there are people here I don't know, I haven't seen before. Are there any questions anyone in the public has just about the process? Where to find things, how to track things, how you can participate?
Yeah.
Yes.
You said at the very end there's a vote. What is the majority required to pass that project?
I guess it's four votes from council, right? So, Matt? 4 votes. Okay. So 7 members of council, 4 have to vote. Now, the mayor can veto that, correct? And then there needs to be 5 votes to override the veto. An ordinance? But not a resolution. Okay. Okay. So it takes 4 council votes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions just about the process? Okay. All right. Thanks for bearing with me while I explained all that. Okay, so we'll begin then with the presentation. Tim, welcome back. Thank you for being
It's
here.
good to be back.
Yes, nice to see you again. And we'll turn the floor over to you. We do have your documents queued up.
Well, would you want to project them on the projector? Is that-
Would you?
I think for Nancy's portion, that would be helpful.
Do you have a, did you bring it with you or not?
It was well, we have backup hard copies if you can't get them projected,
It
but
might
it was
be
an
better.
email that we sent.
I can give them to you.
Oh, okay, Nancy.
Do you have what you need on that computer?
I'm sorry?
Do you have what you need on that computer?
Nancy brought a jump drive.
Okay, set up the computer.
Which one?
Architectural plans.
Do I need to share the meeting?
It's okay if I just start.
I'm sorry, just introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Pressley and Planning Commissioner, Mr. Adams. Thank you to everyone who's come to take the project in person and online. My name is Bob Careless, and I'm the project. Tim Rubens here, Lindsay Ashton from the CEO Architecture, Patrick Strong, and Andy Mossman from Site Engineering Concepts are here as well. We're happy to be here tonight to present, which is really our first formal presentation. As Todd mentioned, we were here in March and June of last year to go over concepts and elements of the project, which you're going to see now as we develop renderings and elevations. I'm going to turn it over to Tim in a second, and Todd did a great job sort of setting the stage for why we're here tonight. There's really two components to our attendance tonight. One is our preliminary and final land development submission, and the other is our conditional use application. And the conditional use application, for those wondering what that's for, that's not for the use of the property per se. What council did last year was pass an ordinance which said 3 stories or 36 feet is approvable by conditional use in the 5A district. So in the traditional sense of a conditional use, you know, the multifamily components of the retail, that's not what we're talking about here, parking. We're talking about the height of the building. Now, everyone will remember that before, I believe, December of 2019, 3 stories was permitted in the 5A. Council in 2019 downzoned the property to 2 stories and put it back last year to allow 3 stories by conditional use. What is a conditional use? Conditional use is not a variance. A conditional use is a contemplated permitted use in the ordinance that's subject to the applicant demonstrating compliance with certain standards that are set forth in the ordinance. Here, it's what council has passed at the Planning Commission's recommendation, everyone knows, which is the green building standards. Now, the green building standards are going to be part of our construction that we'll go through with our conditional use here and show how we will covenant to meet those. You know, for example, supply, getting on-site renewable sources, things like that, which we'll go over later through our project. But again, the conditional use is again a contemplated permitted use, so council has seen fit to allow 3 stories, subject to going through this procedure that Mr. Pressley described. So with that, Tim, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short. Notwithstanding the fact that this is the first official meeting, we've been here a couple times, and I don't want to be repetitive. But on the other hand, there are some new faces and some time has passed, so I thought it would be important just to maybe reiterate some of the things that I brought up in the past that I think are important for everybody to consider. So thanks, everybody, for allowing us to present tonight. Despite, one of the things that I wanted to point out again is the fact that despite the fact that it's a high-profile project for sure, the actual scale, I think it's important that people understand the scale of the project. And I thought it was important for me to get into a little more detail about that. So really, when you break the project down, which has different parts to it, so it's not just a simple, straightforward, ground-up project. What we're proposing is to save both the Revivals building and the Get building, in addition to what we refer to as the Little Gym building up on North Narberth Avenue. So all the two-story buildings remain and get renovated. What we're proposing to do with the project is to focus on the one-story buildings that go from, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the names, but the old Mapes building down just short of the Get building. So it's Mapes through Easy Phone Repair would be the biggest footprint. And what would happen there is we would propose to go up 3 stories. We'd have 2 stories of residential above 1 story of commercial. The composition of the commercial is sort of to be determined based on the leasing, but as I've mentioned and stressed, and as many of you know, we are very much committed to the local merchants, small businesses, so we have every intention, as I've said in the past, of working with various existing tenants to resize, relocate, and keep them on Haverford. But again, getting back to that phase of the project, it's 17 proposed apartments over approximately 12,000, 13,000 feet of commercial space. The Get building remains in place, but we do propose to have a public plaza in between the new apartment 3-story structure and the Get building. And then when you jump to the other side of Get in the direction of North Narberth Avenue, we propose a very small 3-story building that's essentially connected to that side of the Get building. So when you aggregate this, what we're talking about is 17 units of new construction from the Mapes down to Easy Phone Repair, 2 units above in the existing second floor of the Get building, and then 2 new units on the other side of the Get building where Mainline Shift is currently located. That in a nutshell is the project, and we'll get into a lot more detail. Nancy's going to walk you through all of that, but I also just wanted to reiterate some things that I've said in prior meetings that I think it's important for everyone to hear, especially those of you that weren't around for the prior 2 meetings, which is, you know, we are a local team. We did not drop out of an airplane from some other city. We're very familiar with Narberth. I have a long history, personal family connection with Narberth. We have absolutely no intention of changing or wrecking the character of the borough. Thanks. You know, we have a complete appreciation of what makes Narberth special. And despite the fact that this is, again, high profile, it's right in the middle of the borough, and despite the fact that it does involve multiple stores, I would suggest one perspective might be that a little change isn't a bad thing, and that we're keeping a lot of the great 2-story buildings with some history and some character, and we're looking to just shine up some pieces in between with the ultimate goal that when this is done, people are excited, it's good for business. You've got these residents that really seek out a lifestyle an urbanesque lifestyles would be the buzzword. So folks that would be candidates for our apartments will want to walk out of the building and patronize the shops and the restaurants and activate the street. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's the other thing I've said in the past. By no means is this some sort of new concept. This is probably 20, 30 years in the making, where people, it's sort of a proven thing where if you can create some apartments and revitalize the commercial space, good things happen and they tend to snowball. So what I would suggest is that, again, a little bit of change isn't necessarily a bad thing. And what I've found in my travels is most of the pushback that you get around change is more around the uncertainty of it. But hopefully tonight, Nancy and our team will do a good job of answering a lot of questions and clearing up maybe any uncertainty that you might have. So with that, I want to turn it over to Nancy, and then we fully expect to answer a lot of questions and address any concerns or issues. So we'll be here to do that. But for now, you want to walk me through the project?
Thanks, Tim. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Your voice carries beautifully. Hopefully I will. Hi everybody, I'm Nancy Bastian, architect with CDP Architects. We are a Philadelphia architecture firm, for 41 years. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk to you about 230 Haverford Avenue. And I think Tim set it up really well. Look, I like to think of this as kind of a bit of a quiet project. I know for you all, this is a big project with a big impact on your community. But the way we've really tried to address it is, and I love the word shine up a little bit, that we're sort of working with this site, taking what's really strong and really working here at this site, and trying to add to it some additional vitality. People living here, the one-story buildings, I think everyone can agree are severely underutilized, and we just see a real opportunity here to create and improve the streetscape along this block of Haverford Avenue. The plan that you're looking at now, a few things I'll point out, and hopefully it's easier if I have a pointer, but
Stop putting it in its face.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So I'm just going to orient everybody. Here's Haverford Avenue, here's North Narberth Avenue. The existing parking lot that I'm sure everybody knows of that's there today will not change. That is, we're proposing to keep exactly the same. As Tim mentioned, this is the Get Cafe building. You can see the roof there. Thank you. That will stay and be renovated. It needs some love. There's a exterior stair stuck on the back of it, that will be removed. There's a stair to get to the second floor in the adjacent one-story building, that will be removed. We'll have a new stair put in. Here's the North Narberth little gym building, which is not part of this development, and then the Revivals building on the corner, which is not part of what we're talking about today. But all of those will stay. What we saw and what we see is an opportunity here to do an infill. And the first thing we really looked at was pulling away from the Get Cafe building. Right now, to get to the parking lot for pedestrians, it's a 4 or 5 foot wide walkway. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, and it's not great. So we really see an opportunity to create a courtyard, a plaza, a bit of a gathering space here that people will move through to both get back to the parking lot, as well as to enter into the apartment building here. So this will become hopefully a lively and activated space that will really help this retail. And will also open up the Get Cafe building in a way it has not been opened before, and we see opportunity to create some openings on the side of the building and really celebrate that building, which is a beautiful little building. So if we go to the next slide. So here's that first floor of our proposed building. Here's that courtyard I was just talking about. This is just one scenario how this might break down. It could break down 10 different ways for the retail. There's a trash and loading area in the rear. That will stay exactly the same. We're not changing that. And again, the parking remains the same. But off this courtyard is the entry into the parking. Also the opportunity for this retail to be real corner retail and perhaps open up onto the courtyard. So, and as Tim said, it's 12,000 square feet of retail.
Just say that you are the interior.
Yeah, and I will reiterate that this, it shouldn't really, it just to give you a sense of scale, I can't read it from here, but this just shows what a small shop might be and, some bigger retail that it's just, it's not what it is. So we can go to the next one, which will take us up to the second floor. So at the second floor, we have a double-loaded corridor with units facing to the south and then units facing towards Haverford Avenue. We have several carve-outs of balconies at this second floor, but you'll see once we get into the renderings how that, I think, really helps to break up the scale and massing of the building as we move down Haverford. But here, I don't know, we have 9 units on this floor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 units on this floor. Now we're going to go up to the top floor, the third floor, which at the third floor is where we really begin to step back. So this is a large terrace here, and another terrace here, and a large terrace here. So these units are quite large units on the third floor, but I'll point out we have a real mix of unit sizes. We have 2 efficiency units that are 550 square feet. And then, a range of 1-bedroom units that are 715 square feet up to much larger 2-bedroom, it'll be 2-bedroom den type units that, I think that says 1,500 square feet. It's a real range of units. We'll have the opportunity to have a nice range of unit sizes. The other plans, I think if we go to the next plan, it will show the Get Cafe building. So here on the right, this is the footprint of the existing Get Cafe building at the ground floor. We will take down this 1-story building that sits to the east of it and add this new 3-story building. The existing building currently, sorry, I can't keep this straight, comes all the way up to here. We are stepping back that 4 feet and following this line. So this drive will not be quite so pinched as it is today. We'll have retail here at the ground floor, an entrance to those apartments upstairs, and a new interior stair that will connect on the second floor to these 1-bedroom apartments above at the Get Cafe, and then these will be bi-level apartments within the new construction that will go up to a 3rd floor. And at the 3rd floor here as well, we have a step back, and you'll see in the renderings, this really allows that corner to shine of the Get Cafe building. That's the intention. We'll keep going. I think now we'll just get to these elevations, which in a minute I think we'll go to the renderings. But here you can see, here's the Get Cafe building. Here's our courtyard. It's about 25 feet wide. It's just under 1,000 square feet, the actual front part of that courtyard space, and then it's I believe a 12-foot wide walkway that takes you back to the parking. Here's that new building along the main building along Haverford, and you can see the buildings, the Philosophy building, and then we step up to a 3-story building right here at the train station, and then here's Get Cafe, and to the left of it you'll see the new proposed little infill building there. This is a lot easier to see in the rendering, so maybe we should switch over to the other platform. So here's the view towards our new 3-story building, looking at that little plaza courtyard area. You can see it continues back and heads back to the parking. You see here the opportunity for that retail and storefront to turn that corner and come and open directly out here. We don't really see that here in Narberth, and the opportunity to create that here just feels like it shouldn't be missed, but we should really try to make this happen. So here we have our proposed 3-story building. If you go to the next view, here we are across the street again. Here's our 3-story building, but you can see it immediately starts breaking down in scale. As I showed you on the plans, that's that large terrace on the 3rd floor. This is the smaller balcony on the 2nd floor. What we've really tried to achieve with the design of the building, in particular this bigger one, but even with the smaller one to the left of the Get Cafe, is a breaking down of the scale that never would feel like it's one monolithic building, and we've been really encouraged to have it, in fact, feel like it could be several different buildings built over several different periods of time. I think it does want to have a coherence, but I really like the idea of bringing in different elements and having lots of different things happening so that there is, we don't want this to feel at all like a monolith. So we'll just keep going, so we'll be more detailed. Here you see the new addition to the side of the Get Cafe building. Here we're playing with a mansard roof that's stepping back. You'll see it in some other renderings where you can see that Get Cafe roof sloping up. Here's that a little bit. We're not as wide as that current building there, so there's an opportunity there for some green space. And this would be retail and then the residential up above. We really think that people are going to love living along Haverford Avenue, and there's this opportunity for outdoor space being very activated. This feels really positive. And none of the outdoor spaces are the same. No, this is different than the next one is different. None of them are the same. And I should point out, sorry, that right now what you're seeing is a light colored palette, a light colored brick palette. We have the metal roofing and we have some metal vertical siding in the back. We are negotiable about the palette, but this is, yeah. You can keep going, thank you. Here again, you can get the whole big overview picture. Here at this end, it feels more like a standalone building right here, and then to the right of it is that terrace, and then it breaks down, and there's another 3-story building. Just 2 stories here, and it's just 2 stories here. It may be clear on the next rendering. Here you really get a sense of that, of really trying to have elements that could stand on their own, awnings that are different colors. Sometimes we have a sign band up here, sometimes that disappears. We're really working hard to make this feel as dynamic as possible. And here you can see the side of the Get Cafe with the overhang of that roof and that outdoor space. And the opportunity to have some windows there too. It's terrific. Here we are just looking up Haverford again at Get Cafe. And here, finally, we're at the other end looking down, and this is that large terrace I mentioned, that 3rd floor unit, and this 3-story piece, but immediately drops down to just being 1 story here and then 2 story. So hopefully you're getting the idea of that we're working really hard to take this massing, not have it feel massive. So again, you see the light colored brick and the siding, colorful, chance for colorful awnings, and other opportunities we could bring color into this as well. We haven't quite gotten there yet. I think this is the last one. We're back at the main plaza again. Let's see the intention at the 1st floor. I believe that might be the last. Yes, that's the last one. That walks you through the project. Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, I would just point out that when you're down at pedestrian level on that 1st floor, the idea is that each one of these spaces, as they get leased up, the tenants will sort of personalize whatever storefront, whatever materials will be sort of on brand with whoever that tenant is. So this is just our best guess when you get down to that level. But it will definitely be different. There'll probably be a lot more variation, is what I would predict. Different materials, different colors, different textures. But until we know the composition of that, we can't solve for those details.
I think even what Tim's saying, on this rendering here, you can see here the storefront goes all the way to grade, but here there's a brick base. It's playing with some of those things to, again, not have it feel that it's all the same mystery.
The only other thing I would point out is this is, I don't know how many different iterations of this rendering we've worked on, but it's clearly subjective. You can't please everyone in terms of the materials and the colors and textures. We've had prior iterations where there's bright red portions. So we're certainly open to suggestions and ideas. We've already solicited a lot of them because as I think you know by now, we're collaborative and we want to please as many people as we can. So these are things that we love some feedback on.
Anything else?
Yeah, Todd, do you want me to make any comments about the conditional use, or do you want to talk about that? You want to, have questions about the presentation, questions about the presentation first, and then we'll come back to the conditional use, or how would you, we'll go to your prerogative.
Yeah, thank you. I think it would be good to hear how you are going to address the conditions of the conditional use, and also if there are any other types of relief, such as waivers, of anything else that you're contemplating would be necessary in order for this to be approved.
Okay, sure. So the conditions or the standards that are set forth in the ordinance for the conditional use, the green building standards. The first one is that the building is to be constructed with the current version of the ICC, which is 2021. This is, it's hard to show you how we would do that. When you talk about complying with the ICC sets forth certain pathways to energy efficiency, and we would elect a provision or a pathway that this would be constructed to once upon approval that would attain that energy efficient rating. So it's sort of like saying you're going to build it according to the building code, or if you were in Philadelphia, you're going to build a platinum building, you would enter into a covenant saying we are going to do it to the standard. And that's exactly kind of how you set this up, where that, one of the conditions of the conditional use is that you enter into a restrictive voluntary declaration of a covenant that would set forth what you're going to do so it's enforceable and reported against the property. The other one is, the second one is that all utility hookups, storage of natural gas, propane, and oil, and other fossil fuels are prohibited for the building except where necessary in the commercial. And I think the intent there is restaurant uses where, where they would need to have natural gas. So for the residential portions of the property, we will comply with that. We would reserve the right. I think there's a great opportunity for a restaurant space here. That we would want to have. If we want to have a restaurant here, we would need to have that type of a hookup. So, and I think Planning Commission and Council have recognized that sort of carve out there, and we would follow that. Electricity, heating, cooling, and similar systems shall be provided from on-site renewable sources if such systems are reasonably viable considering the characteristics of the site. So, typically what that means are photovoltaics on the roof. Here, what we're proposing, and we can get into this more in detail, is we are proposing a green roof for our stormwater management. Why? If we were to put a stormwater system into the parking lot, we would have to take the parking lot offline for a good 3 to 4 months in order to install that system down there. And so we thought that this would be a welcomed alternative for a green building, to have a green roof on top for our stormwater management, not lose the parking lot for 3 to 4 months, keep it operational, keep it active for the businesses as we proceed through construction. So we would, and that's sort of the standard, we would ask that the Planning Commission recommend to Council that taking electricity, heating, and cooling systems such as photovoltaics on the roof would not be reasonably viable for this project in lieu of the green roof. All uses on the property shall require electricity from a third-party provider, 100% renewable energy. I think that's a will comply. Again, that would be in the covenant, that would be recorded against the property. Narberth, to my knowledge, has not enrolled in the Community Choice Aggregate Program. I don't know if, yeah, so I don't know that would be applicable here. The fifth one is the voluntary restrictive covenant, which, again, as I said, we would report to enumerate what we're going to do. And the sixth standard is that you have to have electric vehicle charging stations. And here, under the ordinance, it's 25% of the required parking, which would be 13 spaces, which are provided on the way. I would just make one comment about, and I've already addressed what a conditional use is, in terms of conditions that can be imposed on the conditional use. I would just, this is, you can cue up the Debbie Downer song here, but they have to be reasonable, and they're typically intended to be safeguards. So a typical example, the classic example is that if you wanted to have a football field by conditional use, a condition of approval is that you can have a football field, but you have to have the lights off by 10 o'clock. You can't play music before or after certain hours. That's an example of a condition. Now you're free and entitled to recommend whatever conditions you'd like to council, but I just wanted to frame that out, that the conditions have to be reasonable and they have to relate to the conditional use. So, you want to add anything to the conditional use elements?
No, that's okay.
The waivers. What we are asking for in the waivers, and Mr. Bresci already alluded to this, we are asking for is actually a waiver of your requirement to go preliminary and then final. So we're asking for a combined submission. The other waiver we're asking for is for council to waive the requirement to provide a traffic and impact study. We have provided in lieu of that a traffic analysis to show that the proposed building is not going to create a substantial impact in terms of new trips. That has been reviewed by your engineer, and I think your engineer has agreed with that conclusion in his letter to his review letter. And then the other waiver that we are requesting, there is a provision in your code that requires your roadways to be certain widths, which are not today. The Haverford Avenue has to be 50 feet. Is that right? Is it 50 feet for Haverford, or 50 feet for North Narberth, and it's 33 feet right now?
That's the right-of-way width, 35 feet Haverford, 50 feet.
So essentially what we're asking for is a waiver to maintain our existing condition in lieu of providing a dedication. Why would we not want to provide a dedication? As you can see here, if we were to dedicate space along Haverford Avenue, I think if the parkway were to ever be widened one day, you run the risk of potentially losing some of this activity that we would like to highlight along Haverford Avenue. North Narberth Avenue, we'd be offering dedication into the parking lot. There's a retaining wall there. So we think there's good reason to grant the waiver for that code requirement, that just to allow us to maintain the existing roadway widths on the streets as they are today. We are not asking for any, as of right now, asking for any additional waivers that we have identified. So we've endeavored to make this as compliant as a project as the Planning Commission has envisioned and sort of drafting the code and recommending the code to council. And we certainly hope that you see it that way. Thank you.
Following on that topic, questions for you, Mr. Kellis or Eric. Do you anticipate any waivers related to stormwater management? And we have also some quirky rules about how you subdivide properties and how lot lines have to be drawn.
That's not in there anymore, that quirky.
We took that out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good work, Tom.
That was
As far as, so that particular provision, that's not going to be fun. As far as stormwater management, the codes really don't allow you to get a waiver from storm management. You have to comply with it. And one way or the other, I don't really see why we would not be able to comply with stormwater. Of course, that may in the end, we still have some work with the engineer, some more information, but I don't see why we won't get to satisfaction from stormwater.
yeah. I will ask this because I think it is flagged in Kevin's review letter. Because you are proposing more than one primary building on a lot, we do have a provision in our code that that is also a conditional use. I think Kevin cited that provision in his letter. Is that something you'd contemplate or been aware of?
Which one's that? Line? And that, I have that as any progress proposed to include more than one principal building shall be developed in accordance with the master plan to be filed with the borough.
Correct. That is a conditional use. And the reason I ask that is because that then opens up other potential for conversations about conditions related to more than one building on the lot.
If we didn't have that, is that a conditional use master plan?
Yeah, I kind of talked about that. I think if we approve this, is this the master plan?
That's how we would, I don't think having more than one principal building is a conditional use.
It is. Okay. Because our code only ever, when it was passed, only ever allowed one building on a lot.
Right.
And so we amended it in 2020 to permit more than one building on a lot, so that a large site plan like this could occur. But that there are special urban design requirements that have to be met, and those have to be reviewed through conditional use. I don't think that's an issue. I just think that when you have the conditional use hearing, you should probably deal with both of those conditional use processes. McKenna, why don't you take that?
Yeah, and I'd also cite item number 9, that the front facade width is kind of rolled into that.
And I think this kind of, what was confusing about what happened, so Narberth last July passed an ordinance, a zoning amendment. They passed another amendment in September. And we've seen, and I don't know if you guys have seen this, that not all of those amendments have been caught in codes or the codified amendment. So this number 9, this 65-foot level initially was proposed to be a conditional use agreement, but it's now on the salary. So the cross-reference, we can give that to you, I have that. That was one of the September cleanups that I think council moved that into the salary requirement. So it's not a conditional use. But I understand, you guys are juggling these 3 different texts here, so we can talk about that, but that's a cross-reference to the salary.
I think it's actually both.
Here, we moved it, it's not, I'm sorry.
Okay, then, so those are things we'll want to discuss when we come back to discussion. So the waivers, particularly transportation impact. But I also wanted to ask, because I know it's of great public interest, I know you've described this before, but would you please kind of walk us through how the parking works, how the parking requirements are, what your analysis is of the code required parking, and how you anticipate that requirement will be met?
I'm sorry.
The parking, just walking through.
Just walk through your calculations so the folks here in the audience understand how the parking will work.
For the parking requirements?
Yes.
You want to, do you have those plans? Would it help to put up those plans? If you don't, they're on this USB drive.
You're not on
They're not in the architectural, the site plan and the landscape plan are on this USB.
Right.
So,
Do you want to just refer to parking table?
Yeah. That's what I was getting to put up.
Yeah, I think that's the best way.
Thank you. So the parking tables up in this corner, if you can zoom in on that up there. Patrick Stone, by the way, site engineering concepts. I think you're used, thank you. I think you're used to seeing Rob Lambert here. He's on a plane back from somewhere. So, I was
elected to come. If I stumble a little bit, because I'm not too familiar with the project, that's why I have Andrew backing me up here. Here is how the parking was developed. The first several columns there are the existing, and it's the last one that you're really interested in, the proposed one right there. So basically, residential is one spot per unit, 21 units. Visiting parking is 0.1 per dwelling unit. And then the retail is based on retail and the light industry out of the code, 500 square feet for per space for requirement, using 16,000 square feet. So these are where our proposed numbers are coming up. Then we have the parking credits that were allowed. So for the non-residential, about 2,500 square feet
The retail.
Yeah, right, that's right. So the retail area, we get a credit for. Again, these first several columns are what is existing. The last column is really what we're interested in here, which is one credit, which gives us 5 spaces. The next exemption is for the dwelling unit.
Yeah, one per dwelling.
Right, so we subtract out 1 there. So the total number of spaces required, we get down here to about 49.2. Then using the shared parking out of table 8, with the parking ratio of 1.5, we come up with the requirement of 33 right there. The parking space, the parking lot has 51 spaces in it. And of course, making sure we don't exceed the maximum required. And while there were existing nonconformities, we no longer have any. The next table down is the bicycle parking requirements. Again, we have the short term for both residential and for the retail at the units required by the code, 21 units. At 1 per 6 unit requires a 3.5, and then the short term for the retail requires another 3.2 spaces. So we have 7 spaces required. We're providing 8 spaces, and I can show you where they are at various spots on the plan, subject to coordination with the township of where these bike racks will actually go. And then finally, we have the long-term residential and the long-term commercial requirements. So 21 units at 1 per unit, requiring 21 spaces, and then the 1 per 5,000 square feet of floor area for the retail, requiring another 3.2. This was coming up to 25. I understand from the engineering letter that we may have to update these to match the most recent architectural plans that have gone to HAR. So there is some coordination that still needs to be done to finalize this number, and we suspect that number of required spaces will go to 33, and we'll have to provide bike racks for 33 spaces. I want to zoom, I mean, you can see where, this is one of the bike racks right there, that barbell looking thing. Where the short term we're going, we had several racks out here on Haverford, one back here by the circle. Then the long term, we were proposing a shed, basically a bike shed there. Again, coordination with architectural and landscape will determine the final location of that and the size of that. Last thing I should bring up then also is the EV spaces. So the required EV charging spaces are these right here, these 13 spaces right in that area. Covered. I believe I covered everything. If there's any questions.
I have a question about the parking count. For you guys or for you. If you can zoom in on the exemptions or credits. The 601A7A units under 550 square feet, wouldn't he be allowed half a space for each unit since he has 2 units? That would be 1 space?
Total, right, yeah. It's interesting in that doesn't have to use exemptions or credits.
Doesn't have to use.
Or shared parking ratios, so like the parking's compliant kind of no matter how you maneuver that table.
It's moved.
Correct.
Okay. So for the public at large, I think, is it ultimately, I think 17 or 18 of the spots are kind of attributable to the residential and the rest are attributable to the commercial.
You mean in reality, or are you guys away from it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because there's the charts that you're referring to, and then there's practical
reality
of how this thing functions.
But then we can ask about reality.
Right.
So for those concerned about the amount of parking available, even though this chart counts some parking attributable to retail, those are conceivably open to people who want to come shop.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, right.
Right. So the residential will typically be used at night, commercial during the day.
So Tim, can you talk a little bit about how you see parking being managed here?
Well, as we said in one of the prior meetings, like there's still discussions between us and council, and we've always been open to different ideas in terms of operationally how we go about this, because in general terms, there's a discussion about leaving some meter heads on a certain number of these. There's a discussion about shared responsibility operationally, snow removal, normal maintenance, things like that. So all of that goes into a mixing bowl that's I'll call it in progress. There's a general agreement with council in terms of the big pieces, but we need to work the details out and get everything documented. But like from a community perspective, from a layman's perspective, without getting into the charts and the graphs and the numbers and the credits, the way we see this functioning is, again, I said in prior meetings, it's important to note that there is a huge percentage of existing commercial space that is going to be offline. It's either going to be repurposed to apartments or decommissioned for a plaza. And that's not an insignificant amount of space. That's like in excess of 12,000 feet of commercial space that now ordinarily would be parked in that municipal lot that's not going to exist, or it's going to be repurposed. So when you factor in the decommissioning of the commercial, that lessens the blow. Like the reason that I'm pointing this out is to someone that's not as familiar as we are collectively about this project, there might be this notion that, well, how does this work? There's a lot there now. They're not increasing the size of the lot, but then they're adding a bunch of apartments. How does that work? Well, a huge part of that is the decommissioning of the commercial space. And a great example, like concrete example for folks, is the Little Gym building. It's 8,000 square feet. If I were to go and lease that to a restaurant or a fitness club, you would have X number of employees, you would have a lot of patrons, and you would soak up a lot of parking. Our vision there for that building is to create 8 units, 8 apartment units. So that's just one example of how you're going to de-stress the lot. And so the way it functions is that, I don't know who mentioned it, but we're fortunate, and this was verified in the trip generation analysis that was produced for us. We're fortunate in that the general pattern, of course there's exceptions, is that a residential tenant is going to leave at about the same time a commercial patron is going to pull up. So again, you've got that shared parking. It's in your code for a reason. I mean, it works. So the way we envision this working is some combination of, again, meter heads and then open parking, some of which might be dedicated to some apartments, some of which would be just fair game for everyone the way it is now in the community. So and again, when you run it through your code, which is important consideration, obviously, we're technically overparked. When you calculate, again, all the commercial that's going offline and all the apartments that are coming online. And the code presumably is there for a reason. There was thought put into it. So if you're overparked, that would suggest that what I just went through would work. And one other thing that, again, at the risk of being repetitive, I did mention in prior meetings the idea, this is truly transit-oriented design. It is the very definition of transit-oriented development. It's a mixed-use development physically bolted onto a train, a train station, a regional rail line. So we, as far as leasing the apartments, this is not going to be a scenario, I don't know, I certainly don't want to speak for how you're going to do yours or how other apartment developments work, but we're going to lease this as TOD, which means if you are a prospect and your vision is like I have a property in Radnor where the expectation and the code is 2 parking spots per unit. Well, that's not happening here. That's just not a reality, and that's not our customer. We're going to lease as much as we can to people that will bike, ride the train, and take advantage of the transit-oriented nature of the project. So I've said that before, I just wanted to say it again.
Well, I appreciate you going through that. There are no new people here tonight or tuned in, and so it's one other question about this. When you, when it becomes time for you to work on the building on the corner of Narberth and Haverford, or the former Little Gym building, and how will you meet the parking requirements for those buildings?
Well, we factored, when we ran the parking counts, we factored that in. It's just not part of this land development application, but the whole entire project was run through, and even taking that into account, we had excess parking per code.
So even if it remained commercial?
What's that?
Even if it remained?
Well, no, we didn't run it as commercial because our intention, it is to convert to apartments. So that's the way we looked at it, as 8 apartments.
If that's not part of this application, Little Jim, you're saying, right?
It's not.
If it were part of the application, does that require some kind of relief because it doesn't have commercial anymore in the ground floor?
No, that was an amendment to allow that building to be amended to part of the building.
Is that part of the code now?
Yeah.
So now it can be without ground floor?
Yeah, and that's our absolute intent, is to do that sooner than later. If you've been through the building, it's the highest and best use. I mean, it's got big bright windows, high ceilings. It's just absolutely perfect for loft-style apartments.
Okay. So, if there's, I think there's the major things I was hoping you could walk through. If there's nothing else in your end, I'd like to ask the planning commissioners if you have questions or comments you'd like to make, and then I think it'd be better to surface your questions and comments, and then we can ask you guys each to go through your comments too. Typically I start to my left. Charlie, are you ready to go? First meeting, first speaker. Nora, this is the time if you have questions or comments. I think at this point, it's more about trying to elucidate information or expressing issues you're concerned about. We'll come back towards the end of the agenda item to discuss what we'd like to recommend to council.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the presentation. I guess just sticking a little bit on the parking element, the 13 EV, it seems, and I'm all for it, but it seems like a lot. So how does it kind of get bifurcated between the resi and the commercial and the public? Just making sure there's enough parking for the public if those are taken offline in addition.
Yeah, so it is a lot. If you compare it to other developments out there. It's heavy on the EV. I can't tell you, as we sit here, we haven't designated which spaces are going to be EV, because again, it goes into the mixing bowl of this discussion we're having with council. Are some at the meter heads, some elsewhere? You know, we haven't worked any of that out. We just know that, you know, there's a formula and there's a number that we have to hit, and we're going to hit it. But that we just don't have the exact spaces.
Okay. And then my other question was on the long-term bike storage. Is that for public use, or is that just for the residential?
There's a combination. So there's two different formulas. One is run for public community use, and the other one is based on apartments. Again, you know, we're certainly going to adhere to it. However, again, if you were to compare it to places like Bryn Mawr Village or you know, Lower Merion, downtown, we've said this in the past, it is exponentially higher on the apartment numbers than Center City or some of these progressive areas that are very bike friendly. I'm not talking about like incremental, I'm talking 300–400%. And knowing that our clientele skews, whereas in a lot of times when you have these mixed-use developments, it's young professionals, empty nesters. Narberth skews a little more towards empty nester. So I think that a lot of that's, candidly, it's not going to be used, but we're going to comply with whatever we have to. And like I said, some portion of that is specific to the apartment residents, and then other portions are for customers and community.
Okay. And I like the fact that you have bike parking. I just envision more it being used for the public. People come to bike to retail as opposed to the residents really sort of having first ride in that. So
that's what we call short-term use. And long-term use is more for storage or potentially like for employees. So we're differentiating the code for that.
Okay.
Well, if I could, just while we're on the bike spaces, Kevin had pointed out in his letter, and is correct, that by the time we had filed the plan, I don't think we had thought about delineation between bedrooms. Your code is the greater of units or bedrooms, so based on what we have at least preliminarily set forth for bedrooms, I think, does that say 32 spaces? I think Kevin had correctly pointed out, based on what we submitted, it should be 37 spaces now. Is that right, Kevin? 37 total. 37 total. So that's a correct catch on this part. So we would have to bring that up to 37 spaces.
Just be mindful that I think that's going to increase the size of that shed. Including the building coverage calculation.
that was all my questions. The only other comment I had was more aesthetic on the public plaza. I love it. Just aesthetically, I thought you could try to blend out the concrete to something else a little bit more user friendly or park friendly than necessarily be grass.
Greener.
Yeah. Just a comment. A resident comment.
I have a question for Nancy. Here it comes. I don't have my thing. She's told me. I don't need a thing.
Is it not funky enough for you?
It's fun. It's not funky enough for me. That's for sure. But we'll get to that. I have stood on Haverford Avenue with plans and elevations in hand, surveying both sides of the street simultaneously. And I wonder how you feel as the designer here. The proposed elevations comport with the scale of the existing north side facade running the whole length of the block.
Can we get one of those photographs up?
I will tell you that my observation is that the old-fashioned funky south side, north side rather, has a different scale than I see in these elevations. And I wondered how you feel about the contrast between the north and the south sides of the street and how you think that it's going to feel when built.
And when you say the north side has a different scale, it's mostly 3-story, right? It's 3-story at the corner of North Haverford Avenue.
Yeah.
Some point it does step down to 2 stories on that north side, and then go back up to 3 stories. What do you, can you just say a little bit more?
The scale and texture of the components of the elevations, windows, doors, gewgaws, accessories, and whatnot, give it a smaller scale. I'm thinking, you know, it's not too far from the north side of Haverford Avenue to Diagon Alley that was familiar to Harry Potter. Little buildings, smaller windows, and all that. When I look at these elevations, and I think you can sort of start to see when you look at them, these don't completely convey it, but there are a lot of doors. There's a door every 20 feet. Now your elevations don't show any doors because, as Tim has explained, the doors are dependent upon the build out for tenants. However, the net effect is that the experience of walking down the proposed south side sidewalk is deadly, as I experience it in my mind's eye. And we can see that in the elevations. The mullion-to-mullion spacing is much greater than what you see in most of the windows on the north side of the street. The upper story is much smaller windows. In the proposed elevations, all the windows are exactly the same size. And they're mechanistic in their appearance. Now I can imagine that commercial tenants on the ground floor are going to develop their storefronts, at least on the inside, to suit their businesses. The apartment dwellers upstairs are probably not going to do that, apart from, you know, hanging window treatments on the insides of their windows. But all the windows are exactly the same size, and they're very big. They're not compatible, in my opinion, with the scale of the windows on the existing north side. So I think the elevations generally have a scale problem, to be perfectly frank. And I urge you to revisit the scale of the components that we're going to see as we travel up and down the street.
Oh, I appreciate what you're saying. Can you just zoom in a little bit more on our elevation? You can see it, we did, so you see some narrow windows that were inserted in there. Yep. But I would take you up on that to go and survey how big those windows are across the street and overlay them on here and see what we get.
Yeah, can I segue? Can I get out of turn?
Can I segue back?
Can I segue? So, in light of what Jim is saying, and also this feeling monolithic, I think the second and third floors are a single corridor that run the length of the building. The street slopes. So you'll see at the right end, or the west end of the building, the windows are quite a bit higher in comparison to the building next door. And if you go to the other end of the building, you'll see that they actually are fairly close in position to the Get Cafe building. Are those windows regulation size for egress? No, they're bigger. So they could be smaller.
They could be smaller.
Okay. So as long as they're bigger than regulation,
they're way bigger than regulation.
Then they could be reduced,
yeah,
and feel better on the facade.
On the upper floors, there's a level corridor.
Right.
And so I'd like to segue again to another point, which is that the Saldo stipulates that front facade width that exceeds 45 feet, 65 feet, shall provide for differentiated horizontal sections that provide, among other things, a width not to exceed 45 feet for each portion of a building facade. And that if there was a way to make 3 buildings, which is what you would need for the total length you have, you would be allowed, or you would be able to reduce the height of the second floor progressively as you go up the hill. You could get rid of that stair tower that's in the middle of the courtyard, which to me really takes away from that lovely courtyard that could go all the way through to the parking lot, and have each of those 3 sections have their own entrance on the parking lot side at 3 different heights. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
There's one elevator.
Yeah.
There's one
Well,
elevator.
I understand that, but maybe there need to be 3 elevators, you know, I mean, or to me, or maybe there's a way to design it with an elevator that has stepped, you know, that has, you know, different levels front and back, or, but all I'm saying is that that's one of the reasons it reads as a big monolithic building, even though I appreciate you've broken it up. And I appreciate the idea of it being broken up and having, you know, various levels and balconies and heights. To me, that does do that. But it looks monolithic because those corridors that are all across the apartment floors are all the same height. And the Saldo said you have to break it up.
I think it can be handled in a painterly fashion.
Yeah.
Just by jiggling the placement and the size of the openings. And I have to comment that that's an issue with the buildings you've already built also. The openings are bigger than Narberth. And it contributes greatly to the pushback, I think, that we've gotten from the public about those 2 buildings. With the size of the openings is out of scale with the existing stuff in the town by a fair amount, not just a little bit. An example, and I'll use my old-fashioned point, is these windows right here, which are hundreds of years, thousands of years old. They're all smaller than the ones that are proposed, and it's a significant factor in the impact that the new construction would have.
The only thing I would mention is that with new construction, you have exorbitant costs that, you know, these other buildings, and I own plenty of older buildings where the basis is low. The building's built, it was there for potentially 100 years. When you build a new building, the only way you can pay for it is through your revenue, you know, through your rents, whether it's commercial tenants or apartments. And we just have to find a way, strike a balance to make sure that that these are marketable, you know, at market rates. I will say, I appreciate the comment. I don't disagree with it. I would only say that when it's in the eye of the beholder, when you're inside the units, for what it's worth, they're amazing. I mean, they are just staring out at Haverford like the 100 Forest, looking down treetops and storefronts. They're just amazing. But I do appreciate that the other perspective is looking up, street. Yeah, from the street. I get it. It's just a balance, though, because
we're the keepers of the funky.
Yeah,
the funky here.
There's got to be a way that we can strike a balance where we make it funky, but we don't lose the marketability. Where, you know, you don't want to show someone a brand new unit that has like portholes in it or anything.
I'm not suggesting portholes.
No, we'll figure this out.
I'll also point out that just our first to second floor dimension, and this came up on the other projects as well, is taller than what was built 100 years ago too. To accommodate mechanical systems and all those other things.
What are the floor heights?
It's on here.
Yeah, I couldn't read it.
It's
14.
I
have it right in front of me.
14 feet from the first to the second floor, and then I believe it's 10.8. 10 8 above that.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, your turn, Dave.
I have to admit that my biggest issue was really kind of getting an understanding from the drawings of what the matching is and how it relates to the other side of the street. And what I would ask is a couple of things. First, I loved your aerial axons that you did on the other project, the other two projects. They were so descriptive and so easy to understand at a glance of what was going on and what the massing was. And I'm dying to see the same thing here. I get very frustrated when I look at these and the trees are obliterated. The facade, I was telling Jim this afternoon, I tried that once at a first-year jury at school, and it didn't fool anybody. But I hadn't figured it out, and I was going to hide it with a tree. I don't think you're trying to fool anybody, but I would love to just chop the trees down so we can see the massing and have figuratively, and have the perspective to include the other side of the street. And along that line too, although I'm getting pretty comfortable with the massing, I would just love to see a site section that cuts through the street and has the other side and what's going on this side, maybe 3 or 4 site sections as a way, at least for me as an architect, to really get a better understanding about, what the design is and how the scale relates to both sides of the street. I mean, I've never been particularly worried about a 3-story building on this site if it's handled properly. So the scale per se has never really concerned me. But now that we're here, it would be great to see it graphically, and maybe see some of these elevations rendered a little more, with color. I'm not at all convinced about the white brick. I'm glad you said that we're open to talking about the palette, because I don't think the whites and the grays would work. Again, I would love to see more demonstration of that, but I for one would probably go to the more, I don't know if traditional is the right word, but traditional red brick and those kind of tones. I know there's limestone on the other side of the street and there's some light colors, but again, it's, how do you get the two to working together? I've never been a great fan of white brick anyway, so I'm just not sure that's there yet.
The clay all has to come from Ohio,
Right.
for white brick, so we don't have it in Pennsylvania. The other side of the street is polychrome, actually. Some of it's painted wood, but it achieves the effect of a multicolored facade if you squint at it. So a lot of it's not even brick, a lot of it's stucco, and we have all kinds of stuff over there.
The other thing I'll mention, which, and I know the whole issue of the commercial space and how it gets divided up for tenants is to be determined. But I will say from talking to residents, I think there's universal concern about losing those small tenants. The Get Cafe, the ice cream parlor, in those tenants. And when I see that commercial plan as it's laid out here, and I understand it was just a placeholder, but that sort of is like a giant red flag in what I hear from public comment. And when I see the elevations with no doors and those long stretches of windows, I think, wow, people are going to really react negatively to that. I mean, I keep on hearing over again, are we going to get those tenants back? What can we do to keep the small guys in the number? That's why your opening comments were very reassuring, but then they conflict a bit with with that plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was careful to, to caution everybody. It literally is just, at this point, a pretty picture. And there's lots that it's going to evolve. There's going to be many different storefronts there. And I've said openly, publicly, many times that we have every intention of working with a bunch of the existing tenants. And there'll be a mixture of some big and some small, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
And a final design comment. I really hate the mansard roof. At least as it comes onto the street. And it's just a personal preference. But yeah, I would much rather see at least that corner block go up to the three stories. If you really got to have that mansard roof, I would just keep it off of Haverford Avenue. Okay, that's what I got.
I went to Canada and I was inspired by the mansard roof, so I take that as a personal insult.
I don't agree with Dave, but we can deal with that later.
I have them in Canada, so the snow slides.
I said to Jim this afternoon, what are we trying to do, Baron Haussmann here? I mean, we're trying to do Paris. I mean, for me, it's an anomaly for Narberth. At least certainly along Haverford Avenue. It sticks out as a design element that doesn't have any context here. So, that's for what it's worth.
Okay. The goal, just so you know, was just to, in the vein of staying funky and different, take advantage of the fact that is technically a totally separate building and designed independent.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, I mean,
I figured that's what it was. And again, it just as a personal preference, I would rather the brick go up to three stories for the width of that building, at least for that corner piece of it.
Yeah.
And so the mansard has a way of dying into that vertical brick as it does at the south end of the building.
Well, I'll just throw out there. The town has the Dickens Festival for crying. I mean, they're totally playing up the stage set as it is, and that's partly about the scale of it. I think that we've, in the previous conversations, really pushed the idea of having a lot of diversity in the building because you're replacing multiple buildings or multiple storefronts with one development project, and how are you going to make sure it doesn't read as that monolith that people are concerned about, or essentially the clash of eras with the existing building stock. So the mansard is you want to be charitable, it's whimsical, right? It's unusual, it's a little bit iconic, and people are going to have opinions about things that stand out. I feel like if we just go with the palette of the rest of the building, it kind of doesn't stand out very much. So I think if we're asking for diversity in design, we might actually want more funkiness. The other thing, I went to architecture school too, but I got away from it, right? But we weren't pushed, at that time, all those years ago, we weren't being pushed in a funky direction, let's say.
I wasn't either.
Right, a lot of pushed in the modernist direction.
I came to it later in life when I finally sobered up.
Well,
yeah, that's wisdom in a journey.
Wait, I'm trying to make sure everyone gets the surface. So Adam, can you kind of go through whatever comments you've got, and then...
Well, unless Dave, you want to finish yours? Or...
No, well, I'll only say in response to that, and we said many times as we wrote the form-based code that it's not a style manual. And when the designs first came out for the other two buildings, the first time I saw them, I said to myself, well, it's not what I would have done, but the form-based code is not a design manual. We're not telling you it has to look a certain way. That was the whole point or a big point about writing the code the way we did. So I appreciate, and I know I'm treading on some thin ice here, starting to get into stylistic preferences. On the other hand, since it's a conditional use, that kind of gives us some leeway, I think, to be able to do that. But yes, I do appreciate that that we can only go so far and say, gee, we think it should look like this and not that. Having said that, I think the windows are too big too.
Well, the only other thing I'll say is, in earlier iterations, this building with a mansard, I hear you don't like, but that was the white color brick, and then the rest, the other building was a red brick. Which I think is also still worth considering. That this little jewel here can be completely different than everything else. It could have completely different windows at the second floor than the others as well. But that was the original intent. Is that this isn't just we stopped one building and we glommed part of it and stuck it on the other at all.
Yeah, and probably my response to the quote funkiness, whatever the hell that means, is to think about the handling of different bricks, different brick patterns, and what you can do with that, varying the lintels, those kind of things that'll give a richness to the facade as it goes down the street, and keeping the number of materials, to a minimum. But again, that would just be my response.
I want to pull us back up a little bit out of the, because it's 9 o'clock and I want to make sure everyone has a chance to comment. We hear from other folks. So Adam, would you like to continue? Any other comments or questions?
Adam already started, so you should.
Yeah. And again, this is mostly to questions. We can have further discussion after this.
So questions?
Well, we can have a further discussion about what we'd like to suggest to council a little later. But just reactions and questions, really.
Which one is it, reactions or questions?
Either. Couch them as...
Can someone talk about the back rear facade? Because there's no renderings of it, and my reaction is it doesn't feel that finished, or it feels like it's almost intentionally designed to be the back of the building, and it really is as prominent in a lot of ways as the other side, because you see it from the train station, which is an elevated platform. You're looking into the bowl of the town. It's the first thing you see as you're coming in on the train. And, the parking lot was used all through COVID as a gathering space. The residents would be looking at it if they park their cars there, the shoppers that park there, and so on. So is there, what is the ground floor is just blank, for example. So what's the approach to the back with this facade?
It's certainly not fully formed, obviously, because that ground floor is not going to remain that way. I don't know, Nancy, do you want to talk about?
I think it's a valid point. I think we've spent most of our design energy on Haverford Ave and have not focused as much on the rear. I think as far as the form and shape of this elevation, obviously that's set, so as the building sits back. But they're very valid points. I think that, to me, this will, though, always be the back. I think what's really missing is that corner could really be developed where the entry to the apartment will be, and that's not at all developed yet. But we will be taking trash out the back and deliveries out the back, and so there will be a sense of this being the back of the building. But it's a good point. It's not really well developed.
Well, I get it that we need service ports for the building, but I would push back on marginalizing such a large facade. And then another just question or reaction is these little balconettes. I mean, again, it's fine, but to me, if you considered a metal cantilever balcony, that would be larger, just to be more useful, to the resident, right? So this is like a little sort of Juliet balcony almost. You can't do anything on it. So is it large enough to be practical?
Yeah, no, we've already hit on that, so we're in total agreement. We thought we might go the other way and do like more of a Juliet type thing, but you're right, it's not big enough to be functional. So something's got to get there.
We talked about the scale of the windows. I mean, that the only thing to think about there too is that when you see the big windows in the more modern buildings, the historical reference to me is more like Amsterdam, or, you know, which is to say that there are actually old buildings that had big windows and, you know, the Chicago style and all of that. So the Narberth has the smaller windows, I guess you can see in the context drawings, but you know, I do wonder if maybe the issue is if they're all the same size. So it's like all the same window schedule, and whether that, you know, could be an opportunity perhaps to differentiate or break the building up into pieces. I agree with Heidi's comment. That's interesting that this, you know, the single corridor results in the second floor essentially rising to grade throughout the, you know, half of the block. But maybe there's a way to, maybe that's another opportunity, just an expression of the facade. In terms of character, the parking signage, I concur with the statement earlier that the most important thing is actually to have a series of doors and spaces along the street. This is a significant reduction in the number of storefronts from today, and I realize that that it has to be tenable and, you know, commercially viable, but in terms of replacing the historic fabric with the new fabric, it's not doing the same job if it doesn't have the same permeability to the street. And then in terms of the architecture, I would just throw out there too that, you know, I think there could be space for craft in the sense of using, you know, tile or terracotta or castings to give more artisanal craftsmanship to the building, as opposed to just the smooth brick. And I know in some of the renderings there's actually some kind of corbelling going on, you know, where you step the bricks out, you know, a half inch at a time to get some relief to the brickwork. And that's great, but maybe there, you know, you could explore, there's all kinds of things you can do to give the walls texture and relief. It doesn't have to be just the 4x8 bricks. In other words, you could get some terracotta pieces or some stone pieces or some tile pieces or anything like that to give it a little more texture.
You have a few of those details on this street view, Adam.
Yeah, actually, so if you want to, it's not going to show on the online meeting because we're not broadcasting the full screen, but you can see how, like, even, you know, that's an example of just a little bit of tile stuck into the stone. And I don't imagine, I'm not a builder, it doesn't seem that expensive. You can see some of the detailing that was put into this is very, you know, this is probably as grand as Narberth gets in some ways, because we have the stone base, but it's still a pretty modest building overall. But they put a few details in. The lamps also help too. And again, you can see the rhythm of how many doors there are, because here also, to Nancy's point about them being individual buildings, then each individual building has a residential entrance as well as a commercial entrance. So you're dealing with just a huge amount of permeability in the existing building stock. And you can see the cornice, and then there's a variety of cornices as you go down the block. So that's the architectural side. And that stair tower on the apartment building gives you a pretty big sort of blank wall, which is the canvas you could actually do something with an art piece or anything really. I agree with the comment to request for street sections. And I guess the green roof was discussed as a stormwater strategy, and it sounds like it'll work out the overall.
Yeah, they're proposing largely to use green roof. They're just going to have to demonstrate compliance.
But I'm not sure, is that really preferable to solar panels in terms of output or outcome? But
let's save that issue for a final discussion.
And then I know that there's, with regards to the transportation impact study, would there be any willingness to collaborate with the town on transportation, like pedestrian scale improvements, if we're relying on it being a TOD and reducing its vehicular requirements, which I think, or, you know, its vehicular focus, which I think is definitely doable, is their openness to collaborate with the borough on the design of the bike parking, on wayfinding signs to the parking lot and to the facilities around the town and so on.
Sure. Yeah, I think Tim's going to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you.
All right, Jennifer.
My question is more for you, Todd. Within the zoning code, are there any like stipulations? So the entire ground floor commercial space is still undefined. The renderings show it in one capacity with the understanding that it's going to be revised. Are there any code requirements that would allow us to see what those final designs are? Or would require us to see what those final designs are as far as like code stipulations on opening sizes, frequency of the opening, the size of the storefront?
I'm going to refer that question to Kevin, if he's the appropriate person to ask. And Kevin, I guess one thing to keep in mind is, since the request is that this could be considered as a final, as in addition to a preliminary, what is the standard that must be met in a final design in terms of the finality of what is shown to us?
Sure. It is actually one of my comments in my letter. Essentially dimensions and calculations for compliance with like window sill heights and spacing and massing. So there are actually percentage minimum and maximums. There's minimum horizontal breaks that can be opaque maximums for that. There's sill height requirements, and those are part of my comment letter that they'll have to address. So I think we'll see a majority of that will need to meet a certain set of criteria, but until we have individual tenants, they'll just have to kind of meet those blanket code requirements.
There would be a separate permit issued for the fit out, wouldn't there?
For the interior fit out, there would be.
Which would probably also have a certain amount of work on the facade.
Right, so they'd be on like their own individual zoning permits as they came in. They wouldn't need to go through you, but as we see them here, on whatever plan they showed, he does need to comply with those sections, which are in my letter.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And then my second question is with regards to the requirements in the saldo that Heidi started to mention, as far as like the 45 feet, to what level of detail do we need to see? Like the elevations aren't currently dimensioned to show or prove the 45-foot variation along the main facade of the new building. So do we feel that we have enough information to review that, or?
I guess you don't.
Yeah.
So that's a...
I think we can answer that again. So this was actually speaking with Mr. Careless's comment about the master plan kind of getting moved or removed in ordinance 1059. There was a new section that was added that gives additional stipulations to breaking up the facade. They were moved to the saldo, which generally Eric addresses in his comment letters, but they're really zoning, dimensional standards. So I didn't flag them because they're saldo, and he didn't flag them because they're really zoning. So I was going to talk to you about that. Well,
I can shed some light on why that happened because I was at the planning commission meeting when you guys discussed that. The concern was if they sat in their zoning ordinance, because they are zoning by nature zoning sections, the result could be on, you can't put a zoning section on a case-by-case basis. It's a one-size-fits-all on the, so the concern was that we would be confronted with designing a building and we looked at it, so that's not really what the intention is with this particular section. And you'd be faced with an applicant saying, well, I'm not going to go for a variance to get that just because you don't like it. But the push and pull, I think, that I was sensing was, well, what teeth do we have to enforce it? And the teeth is the waiver. So that's why we're moving this out, so that if something doesn't look right, we could ask for a waiver from it. So that's why that section, that breakup was moved to the south instead of remaining in the zoning code.
That is correct. That's right. And it gave just both parties more flexibility. That said, though, that section of the saldo, which has stipulations for mixed-use buildings that are wider than 60 feet. Are you able to demonstrate tonight how your building design complies with that provision of the saldo?
Yeah,
I think we have to look at that,
Yeah. Okay.
clarify.
That's what you're asking for. I mean, I think we would want to see that, you know, I flagged in my notes here, it's a pretty clear section of the code that lists different kind of general dimensions in the way that you might address the variation of buildings within those dimensions. And so I think that taking the facade you have and kind of looking at it in that context would be something that would be important for you to provide so we can demonstrate the building design.
So for the benefit of the doubt, when you look at the scale that is provided on the elevations, there is a breakup across that if you do the scaling, but the ground floor, because it's a conceptual until you know what the final design is, does not depict that. So that's the area I think for me that is of the greatest concern, because that's the perspective that the average person is going to experience the building. What the upper floors are in this section of the corridor on Haverford is going to be less obvious to the person walking along the street than some of the other buildings along Haverford.
More obvious when seen from the other side of the street.
Yeah.
Do you have any other comments?
No.
That was really only my comment to say this here is I think that actually if you look at that section of the Sauda and how it suggests buildings vary, you know, as they proceed along the street, it will probably connect to a lot of the comments that have been made by other people tonight. I'll say, I too, you know, the doors, I find one of the most incredibly important things, and you know, I've been in plenty of places where there are doors that sometimes they're used and sometimes they're not. You know, our old Mapes store had 3 sets of doors, but they mostly ever used one. But that allowed that storefront to be redivided and reused in different ways because the door was there. Mapes didn't need it, but if, you know, it could have been used and repurposed for 3 different storefronts if they wanted to. If you don't have a door, you can never repurpose it for another storefront unless you pull it out and rebuild it. I also, you know, I understand the real issues with the horizontal plates, but I follow Heidi's comment there as well. And I will say, just to lighten things up a little, I went to a planning school that was an architecture school. Our guru was Christopher Alexander and Charles Moore. I won't speak about Charles Moore, but I will speak about Christopher Alexander. I looked it up, and he does have a pattern, a sheltering roof, pattern number 117. So mansard roofs are approvable under the funky graduate school that I went to. Enough said. So we'll turn it over to the public now. It's a chance for you to ask questions or express your reactions to the projects too. What I would like to do is first, the way I'd like to proceed is first I'll, out of respect for our elected officials here, ask council members if they would like to make any questions or comments. And then we'll just sort of proceed orderly from, you know, from right to left, my right to left, through the rows. And if your turn comes and you have something you'd like to remark, please do. Otherwise, in respect of the time, please try to not restate things that have been restated to, you know, great depth. But please, this is your chance to let us know what you're thinking. So first, I see Council Member Barak is here. We've corresponded. I know you have some thoughts you'd like to share. Would you like to react to them?
First of all, thank you for the presentation. Overall, I think it's a good concept that follows along with a comprehensive plan of mixed-use development
I'm sorry. Would you mind using the microphone?
Oh, sure.
I don't know if it travels. Probably does.
So let me start with let's see, the green parking. I think there can be some consideration given to some green parking standards in the parking lot. I would urge Planning Commission and also the developers to take a look at the Montgomery County Green Parking, Sustainable Green Parking Guide, which provides a lot of different ideas. And I don't think it needs to be very intensive, but I definitely see some grass medians that are just grass and maybe a tree that really could do maybe with some native perennial grasses that would help also with stormwater management and also just really add to the aesthetic of that parking lot instead of just being a concrete parking lot. So that was one comment. And also the idea about the traffic impact study. I know you guys are requesting a waiver for that. And I think that makes sense just because this development is really, it should be focused on pedestrian, bicycle, and transit modes of transportation. We really want to make this a very active transportation friendly areas to make business environment thriving. And there's some things that I would like us to consider together, which I think will be beneficial for the borough and also to you guys in terms of attracting the kind of clientele that you want in terms of your tenants and your retail tenants and residential tenants. So one of them was looking at Haverford Avenue. I think it's ripe for a lot of potential multimodal transportation improvements. I'm looking at the crosswalks. I don't know if you are familiar with the decorative stamped crosswalks. They're MUTCD compliant. They add an aesthetic to the downtown area. They could potentially do that. They're more visible and they would just add some additional visibility and safety for crossing pedestrians. So I think, yeah, exactly, right there, crossing Haverford and also Haverford Avenue, I think you could use it at that section too. And in addition to the crosswalks there, I think we could also do, there's already a curb extension here, or if you look at the Forest Avenue intersection, you could do with the curb extension there, and I would want to explore something temporary, a temporary curb extension, only because we're not sure what we're going to do in the future in terms of adding other improvements there, whether it's a conscious road bike lane or whatever it is. But I think it would be a good place to have it there because right now the parking spaces are butt up right against the crosswalk and the pedestrians literally have to be, they're walking out in between cars and the visibility is terrible there. And from a safety point of view, I think that needs to be addressed. And this may be a win-win situation if we can come up with a compromise with the bike parking. I did have an idea for, and Kimberly had talked about this too, a bike corral on Haverford Avenue, and that could potentially move some of that short-term parking onto the public right-of-way. And I think we should look at the Philadelphia guidelines for bike corral, like location and placement, and in terms of the process of how they do it. Usually it's the property owner that takes care of the installation and maintenance of it, and there's usually an annual permit fee of some sort because you are using this municipality's property. So I think we should look into that. And I do want to make one more comment. This is related to the pedestrian experience of walking through downtown. And so I want to make a comment about the architecture a little bit. I think some of the comments that were brought up by Jim and some others about the scale, I think some of that could be addressed. In general, I'm actually okay with the structure of and the concept of the buildings and the massing. However, the architectural details that could be added just on the building front facade would make a huge difference in terms of the scaling. So if you actually look at the philosophy building and where the Capella Harris one is, you see some of those architectural details that are seen there. Even if some pattern of that or something from that was mimicked or repeated in some of the other facades. And I don't think that would be an expensive thing. But that would make a big difference in terms of its scale. So I think that was it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, one more thing, sorry. And I would also want to explore potential wayfinding funding. We have, it's always been in our comprehensive plan, we've never done it, but if we can have some wayfinding towards transit and other destinations in the downtown, I think that would, the downtown would benefit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Gardini.
My first comment is that I'm glad that I'm not responsible for the minutes of this meeting.
Thanks.
Pretty much everything. Yeah, I'm not an architect, so I'm more a Luddite on that, but I'm glad that this project is in the capable hands of my neighbors. I'm glad that so much thought is put towards that. Just generally, I think I'm going to echo the pedestrian level and the rhythm there being really important. And my main comment, this is one I've made before, so it's not going to come as any kind of surprise. It's just the square footages of the units. There is a good mix there. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, of the kind of different versions of this have been presented over time, I think the number of units has decreased, and I suspect, I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect that the large size of some of the largest units is probably a function of the decrease in the overall unit count. And so my concern from just a policy perspective is that taking the elm, like the price per square foot of the elm as a point of reference for new build rents, if you're lowering the unit count at the expense of having a large number of 1,700, 1,800 square foot units, the difference for the folks renting those units could be several $1,000s per month, right? And so they're new builds, so they're necessarily going to rent for fairly expensive rents, on day one. Over time, that will probably evolve, just taking existing, 100-year-old apartment buildings, they're not renting at new builds. But, so today, on day one, I think that the way that we work on affordability is by having maybe a better mix of some of the smaller units, and just, again, as a personal preference, that some of the larger units might be able to be divided into a couple of additional smaller units. The unit count would go up, but I don't think it would blow up. Yeah, I mean, we just presented earlier that, you already have a pretty meaningful delta in terms of the amount of parking that you have. I'm sure that a couple additional units would probably be beneficial to the finances of your project, and I think it would probably also be supportive of the vibrancy of the retail space and the just general transit-oriented vision. But for me, the entry point to that is that the rents for the folks that are renting this will also be more affordable on what I think is actually a meaningful scale. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to raise, and said before, and it's coming as a surprise. As someone who's not an architect, I didn't have much to say about the architecture, but as someone who's background in policy, that's
Well, thank you. I know there are a couple council members on Zoom. I can't see them because I cannot log into the meeting. If any, pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm still getting used to this new world order. I apologize.
Getting used to it too. I've been a council member for only one day, so I'm not quite sure how to make comments worthy of the council. But generally, I want to thank you for the presentation. You've obviously done a lot of work visualizing this and how it fits into our town. I think you've done generally a very good job, and I'll just keep my comments general. As one of the authors of the bike parking standard, I am supportive of the numbers as they are now, because I'm a believer in if you build it, they'll come. And you only have to look at the Elm, which is the residential development at Forest Ave. We made them put in bike parking. It wasn't as much as we're asking now. They are maxed out there. You know, the owner of the Elm has told me that he has to add, he's looking to adding more bike parking because they get a lot of residential bike usage and relatively low car parking. And I consider that a big success, and I consider the new standards a big step forward, and I think we'll look back on it and really be happy that we did it. And so I thank you for being willing to do that. In terms of the architecture, I'm not an architect. I, of course, appreciate all the design comments. What strikes me most when I look at the elevations, I see you've taken the trouble to put in a lot of detail. There's a cornice evident on, on the elevations, and there's sort of sill lines that seem to be built out. To me, that's the thing that sort of draws the eye when I look at a new building, is the level, the attention to detail. But I've also seen that when a new building goes up, sometimes that's the first thing to get dropped from the plan. You either budget, the details just somehow don't materialize, in the plan. So I will also urge you to keep those up, because it goes a long way to make the building look intentional and substantial. And also, to me, there's not, a pet peeve of mine is where, whatever the facing is, where you have a nice brick facing, wherever it sort of gives way to sort of a vinyl siding effect, like, that's just like, oh, it looks like someone didn't care, or only cared so far and then sort of stopped caring. So I would just sort of urge that, continuing that eye toward the facing the building, to make it look intentional and make it look substantial. And also to Adam's comments about the facing on the rear of the building, I think it's important to have like a solid single facade and not skimp on the rear. I'm not suggesting you're going that way, but it happens. It happens in development that a lot of details get dropped. Basically that's it. I think it's going in the right direction, and thanks for presenting it, and thanks for showing it to us.
Madam, could you let me know if there are any other council members who have signaled they would like to?
Adam, I'll make a quick comment as a citizen, if this is the appropriate time.
Cindy.
Oh, it's Cindy. Sorry. I'll hold my council member comments to the conditional use hearing when the baton is passed to us. But with that said, I'm really excited about revitalizing the heart of our town and securing our small business owners. And those visuals, I want to thank you for presenting them tonight, because I could really see it. I could see and feel that energy that we need. I look forward to more shoppers, more taxpayers to support our future and drinking coffee in that little plaza. Not an architect. I disagree with many of the aesthetic comments of folks. I love that roof. I think it does a really nice job of breaking up a large building. I'm very thankful there's not green bricks. I don't know if that's what funky means, but I'm glad they're not green bricks. But appreciate that we don't want to look like Suburban Square. But thank you very much, Tim, for allowing us to just kind of visualize the energy in that space, which I could do after your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivers. Not council members, right? Okay, so
Fred Bush turned his camera on.
Oh, he did. Okay, Fred, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. I can't be in the room. I'm not feeling great, but I just want to say I'm very pleased to see this project making its way through the official process, and I look forward to having a fuller discussion in council as well once we hear all of your comments from the Planning Commission. So happy to see this moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is that it? Okay, so we'll continue with.
No, the mayor.
What's that?
The mayor has joined us.
Oh.
Yeah, I just turned my my video on. I want to thank you guys for the presentation. It's a good step to see what's going on. I would like to echo the comment to add more doors to the retail downtown as a small business owner in the downtown. Narberth has traditionally been a place of incubating new businesses that have often stayed here for decades. And to the extent that it's going to be new construction and it's going to be top dollar for new construction, a smaller space would be more accessible for many of the incubating businesses. And it would allow them to, establish themselves in a smaller but brand new space. And that's a kind of business that's always traditionally been in the downtown and done pretty well down there. So the extent that we can add doors to accommodate different size space retail, I think it would add to the health of the downtown.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Just a
thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll move on and we'll just move along the rows in an orderly fashion. So we'll start over here. Any comments? Okay. Hi, Kimberly. Any comments?
I got the mic. Okay. Hi, Kimberly Bezak. I live on Dudley, and I co-own Mainline Shift on Haverford in Narberth. We are a baby business, but we're moving into our third year. We are tenants of Tim's and have been really grateful to have him as a landlord. He's been incredibly supportive of our incubator business concept in Narberth. I just want to say that I'm really thrilled as a current business owner in Narberth and a current tenant to just see the project moving forward. I'm really enthusiastic about that. I am feeling really open-minded, as I've said in the past. I am not, I don't have a background in architecture. I don't want to go into the weeds about aesthetics. I'm just really excited to see a plan out there and the discussion moving forward. And I'm also echoing Jean's comments about the bicycle parking. Thumbs up on that. The Elm has really shown that proof of concept that Jim Spear talked about. If you build it, they will come. But again, thank you. I appreciate the discussion here at the table and all of your professional expertise. So looking forward to seeing you get to the finish line. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Erie Shaka, 149 Marion Avenue, and member of the Narberth Environmental Advisory Council. And so from the perspective of someone on the Environmental Advisory Council, I just want to thank the developer and the Planning Commission and the Council for working together, and our other professional staff for working together so hard on the green building bonus. It just, it's just really a culmination of a lot of work. I want to give a shout out to Louise Giuliano and Amy Tekuskli-Feldman and Jean Sabatino, who also, as volunteer citizens of Narberth, worked on it. I just want to reiterate how critical it is that Tim has agreed to no fossil fuel energy hookups except for a commercial restaurant. Just because buildings in urban spaces, buildings account for 60% of greenhouse gas emissions, and transportation accounts for 58%, and transportation accounts for 40%, and then everything else is 2%, right? So we're, between transportation and building use, like that's what we can do as Narberth. So thank you so much. Also kind of with my EAC hat, I just want to encourage the keeping to the 25% EV charging station requirement. Just a little Googling, and right now, in current auto sales, over 17% have a plug. So that includes both only plug-in and hybrid. And it's just been going up exponentially, so obviously they have to build for the future. So, and just like folks were saying in terms of bicycles, if you build it, they will come. If you Google electric vehicle, and if you build it, they will come, you'll find a ton of fact-based, double-blinded scientific studies talking about how, what's needed for EV adoption. And then, let's see, the last thing I wanted to say from my own personal perspective is just to echo what's been said about whatever the style winds up being, that it looked like someone cares. Because I think I personally don't think that there's, needs to be like a magical style of any sort. I think right now we have a very eclectic set of, styles in downtown Narberth, but the main thing is just feeling like what was built from a sense of caring, and that makes you feel cared for as a pedestrian and bicyclist. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I think you gentlemen are with the team. So we'll go over to this side. That's Matt. Any comment? Ed, any comment?
I want to thank everybody for their time, both the council members who contributed and the planning commission, and Tim for his project. I'll echo Kimberly's comments. I'm just thrilled to see it moving. I want to keep it moving. I appreciate all your comments for trying to keep it, make it fit. It's important that it fits and looks like it fits. I don't want to make what Narberth looks like now the target for it. I mean, not everything in Narberth is something that you would aspire to in terms of design. Some buildings look nice, some not so much. And in terms of, things like, as we modernize with, like the green elements of the building, I think we have to also modernize with the needs of the commercial tenants and the residential tenants. No one ever comes into a building and says, I wish this apartment had smaller windows. But, let's make it fit. Let's, if we need a mix of them, let's make a mix of them. And let's design commercial spaces that, residential or commercial tenants want to rent. And let's keep the project moving. I mean, I really want to get that side of Haverford Avenue vibrant again.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, sir.
Good evening, folks. My name is Conrad Krebs. I live on the 200 block of 4th Avenue. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Tim. I think this is an excellent project, an excellent presentation. I think this is very nice. It reminds me a lot of the redevelopments in South Philly and East Pasadena. In particular, there's a project, I don't know if the team's involved, 17th and Federal, but that was very well received by the community there. It has both a restaurant and apartments, and it is really close to where I live. It was a great part of the community. I don't think it's perfect design, but I don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good. And the main thrust of my comments is to gently push back on some comments from the committee. A lot has been made about windows and doors, and that this design's not Narberth, and that's true. But I would say that I would add to that it's not Narberth now. And at one time, anyone who knows the Narberth history is that anything that was not a farmhouse was not Narberth. And a lot's been made about the windows and doors. But one thing I would say is that, historically, windows and doors were small because they were inefficient materials. They were energy inefficient, and that's not true anymore. I think the current design, will allow for great tenants. And while it may not be funky, and I concede that, I do think that the new design is fun. And fun, when you're walking down the street, you'll be able to see from the outside in, experience the shops without even having to go in. Hopefully we get a nice restaurant, you can experience the town without having to step outside. And with that fun will lead to great tenants. And I think more than anything architecturally, Narberth is a town of great tenants, and great tenants make Narberth. And so I really like this design. I would encourage you to keep moving forward and keep the progressive elements of it as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Sorry you had to wait.
Hey, my name is Marty Coyle, lifelong resident, moved here when I was 3, and I think until about a month ago I was one of the owners of the Norris Group's ice cream place. And congratulations on making it 2 years, that's a big deal. I think the one piece of pushback I had was about existing tenants. I walk around and there's just not enough places to spend money. There's businesses I've never ever seen open. I've never seen anybody inside of them. I've lived here forever. I'm on Haverford Avenue every day, and I appreciate the feel. But there's just not enough places to spend money. And I think losing, if you think about the mall model, Mapes and Ricklands were anchor stores. And you come to Ricklands and I go to the Cheap Shock, and the Mapes and you go somewhere else. So I want to be open to ideas, but I think there's some variation of what the retail space looks like, who's in there, new businesses is really what's needed. To give you an idea to get back to Haverford Ave and spend some. Even though when we had the ice cream shop, that wasn't a real business. It was kids making minimum wage and almost free rent. And we made a couple bucks. So it's really tough, and I'm sure you know, to make money in the retail space now. And getting people in there with a vibrant business is really important. Thank you.
When you say vibrant businesses, could you elaborate?
I'd like to see a place that's open and that people are in. I walk up on Haverford Avenue and Narberth Avenue, and I gotta be honest, there's places I've never, ever seen anybody inside. And my parents live in Bryn Mawr, and Lancaster Avenue is littered with stores like that. They're not open. I don't know what's going on. So it doesn't have to be vibrant for me, the place that I would go, but just where there's people in there, where there's people drawn to the businesses. I think that idea, again, of the anchor store, no, we're not open the mall, but variations in size, variations of what's being offered, just more reasons to come downtown and spend money. And I knew when we opened the ice cream shop, one night we were in there, we were hanging shelves or fixing doors, so I can't tell you how many people came in and said, oh my God, when do you open? We can't wait to come. And it was a great draw. It wasn't a long-term business model, but it was an exciting place for the reason for people to come downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Back row.
Hi, Joe Toscano, live at 121 Rockland, and I'm chair of the Environmental Advisory Council. So, Miriam, a few minutes ago, already said most of what I was going to say. I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the effort that's gone into the green building components of this project. I think this is really has the potential to be the kind of building for Narberth's future. So, I echo all the things that Miriam said. I just want to add two other points regarding the green building components of the project. One has to do with the green roof. I think it was stated that the green roof was chosen in order to avoid a temporary disruption of the parking for alternative stormwater management system. And then the downside of that is you can't have rooftop solar. I would maybe reconsider that. I think rooftop solar would be quite valuable here. I think there's an opportunity for that. A short-term disruption of the parking to get that long-term new renewable generating capacity in downtown Harvard seems like something worth considering. It would mean you wouldn't need to purchase renewable electricity if it was being generated on site, so that seems quite valuable too. So that's something that maybe to consider. The other thing, the point about no gas hookups, I think is important. As Miriam said, that's a huge contributor to the emissions associated with buildings. I don't, maybe this will come later in the process, but I'd like to see some more information about what that will look like. That means we'll have all electric systems for the heating and cooling for the buildings. I understand there might be an exception for the commercial restaurants, so you might think about induction stoves or things like that. That might mean you don't need any gas hookups at all, right? If you use high efficiency heat pumps, something like that, heat pump water heaters even, you can have fully electric, very efficient systems that could generate cost savings down the road as well. So there's a couple opportunities here, I think, some things to think about that could generate cost savings. And also, Miriam, you mentioned to me about affordability and getting smaller units. So I think there's lots of things to think about in terms of costs and affordability and cost savings down the road for these elements. But thank you for all the efforts with the green building initiatives in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. There's two more people in the back. Do either of you wish to make a comment tonight? Do you wish to make a comment?
I'm Rob Schlenk. I live at 17 Elmwood Avenue, have for 20 plus years, and I'm a member of the EAC. But my comments tonight are both aesthetic and related to environmental elements. And I thank you for the presentation. It's, I like to see this whole project moving forward. I thought I'm just going to mention some things out of order here, but the first time I've seen these plans. The back wall would be perfect for a green vegetation wall. I think that the residents will enjoy the vistas no matter what. And this being a transportation hub, it's downtown, I don't think it being a place that will be difficult to rent. The pedestrians need to want to stroll here. And every night I'm walking my dog through the streets, I'm looking in the windows, etc. And I have to say that I find something like the elm a little jarring, because I'm looking into people's living space with 60-inch LED screens, and it's kind of naked. And the windows are all the same. There aren't, you know, not curtains, but a way to block some of the views, so it's not as jarring for, I guess some people are more exhibitionist, but, so I'd like to see some more attention to the facades with different sized windows and maybe insets, something like that, that make it more interesting to stroll by as a pedestrian looks at it. And probably for the non-exhibitionist, that it's a little more comfortable. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to stay conservative in that way. I think the little plaza is wonderful, except I think that could use elements in it which would include maybe timber, a green wall. The reason I keep on mentioning green walls, vegetation walls, is that this entire area is in a, we're warming. And Ardmore, you can see on satellite, the insulation values are very high, comes right down to Norberth. And if we can keep it cooler as the temperature increases, and this is happening year by year, and it will continue. That's important. At night, you're not having radiation, the radiance of the pavement and the materials into the street that make it so hot. The other thing is that the buildings can't create a canyon, a wind canyon. I don't know if you've looked at that at all, as far as the channeling of wind, that breaking it up a little bit so that it doesn't channel. And you can look at the the windroses to see if it does channel at all. But once it's built, you can't really change it. The other thing is the building's the roughness and the angles of the surfaces will change the insulation values and keep it cooler so that you're not letting the radiance into the street and on people can be reduced. And I know that seems a little odd maybe, but people want to be cool, and that environment will heat up during the summers. Maybe the opposite in the winters. I think that it'd be nice if the plaza is personalized so that children, seniors, they want to gather. As it's shown right now, I think that I would be more likely to just jet my way through because there isn't something to catch my attention. There isn't a place for people to really gather. I saw that there are seating areas potentially, but I don't see any installations. Maybe it's a consideration for art, textures on the walls. Difference is in the materials and the hues that will make it interesting, a place people want to come rather than just transit through. I'm all in favor of the use of solar panels on the roof. And if it takes 3 or 4 extra months for the construction of stormwater collection in the back, over the life of the project, that is not much of a sacrifice in my opinion. But to the construction, it's up to the builder and to the committees. And that's pretty much it for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I see there are a few people online still. Is anyone who's watching on Zoom interested in making a comment? Could you let us know? Okay. Seeing nobody raise their hand, we'll close the public comments on this topic. So, if any of you have been to Planning Commission before, you know that at 10 o'clock, if not before, our members fade quickly, and it's not really productive and to continue serious
What do you mean by
conversation.
that, Todd?
I'm speaking for myself primarily. I thought it was very important, though, to make sure we had a chance to take the public's pulse on this project, to hear what people are thinking, and for sure we're hearing a lot of support, a lot of interest in getting this done, a lot of creative ideas about how to make this a place that really contributes to the street life, pedestrian life, and economic life of the borough. So I'm glad we did that. I feel like there are a couple of and we haven't had a chance yet to review the comments that MCPC, the borough engineer, or the borough zoning officer have made. I do think a couple of issues have surfaced. One is the waiver you're requesting for a transportation impact study, and how improvements to the public realm are related to the vision you have and to this overall process. I think that probably merits further discussion. I think that, as you know, we've been circulating a couple of potential conditions, one related to a process to make sure the building is built according to the design, and another related to sort of a kind of voluntary way of looking at other kinds of green building practices. And then I think I'm intrigued by this notion that the public has raised, and that perhaps it would be a better trade-off to have solar on the roof than a green roof. I think those all merit further discussion. I think that many of the issues that Eric and Kevin raised I think are kind of administrative issues. I think there's some issues of clarifying some zoning procedures, what's conditional use, what's not, how's the SADO and the zoning. I think that's better if that can be done in an administrative format than us debating it there.
You're correct about the master plan, the two principal buildings requiring part of conditional use, so that would be an amendment to our application.
Yeah, and I know you have some questions about what Ken wrote, so I think there's just some more time to kind of sort that all out. We don't need to sort that out here. I think on your end, it would be good to see an evaluation of how your proposal conforms to that SADO provision too. So I think in terms of continuing our consideration of this, any recommendations we would like to make to council about conditional uses or their hearing thereof, we'll need to have more time for that. I also know there's another issue that we're not going to be able to get to tonight, which is extremely timely, which is an ordinance related to mixed use in multifamily buildings because it relates to the proposal for 119 Essex. Those are kind of intertwined. So I'd like to take the temperature of the Planning Commission. We do have a special meeting scheduled for January 11th. Advertised. We can meet that day if you'd like. We originally had been planning to meet that day to talk about 119 Essex. That application is not so urgent right now. We could meet on the 11th and continue this conversation that we're having right now. Or we could not meet the 11th and just meet at our next regular meeting on February 5th. My concern with that is I doubt we'll be able to cover all we need to in that one meeting. But I'd like to take the opinion of the other Planning Commission members, your team, and you guys too. What's a good path to kind of sorting through this? Should we continue to have our meeting on the 11th and continue to work on this? Okay. Are you guys able to support that? If we continue to have our special meeting on the 11th to continue the conversation about 230 Haverford, are you guys able to?
I was just making sure I'm referring to the.
I know we talked about canceling it, but I'm looking now. I don't think it was advertised as canceling it.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
I don't believe we actually formally canceled it.
Okay, so I was just making sure administratively. Yeah. Okay.
Good thing we got the person who knows here.
So would the agenda item for the 11th be 119 Essex in the 5A mixed use?
No, the agenda would be to continue this agenda item, and it would be the zoning ordinance that's been advertised for mixed use.
So
119 Essex.
I didn't think the 119 Essex discussion would be that long a discussion. But it seemed to me there weren't that many issues.
We've already notified the applicant that we'll have that on our agenda in February.
Okay, all right.
We'd like to proceed.
It's a land development application regardless, will not be until February.
Yeah, so we, okay, so.
Left is the on-site parking, isn't it?
Yeah, and very small things, street trees.
Yeah, a couple of minor things.
But we told them, because we're working out these zoning issues, that we're going to defer, and they agreed to defer the process until the zoning issues are solved, because it will make their process easier, hopefully. Are you guys open to that, so we can continue this and be prepared? Okay. Hopefully between now and then, if it's at all possible, you can put your heads together with Kevin, work through some of the zoning issues. I don't know if there's outstanding issues with Eric or not. And then one thing, if it's possible to look at your project in the context of that one SADO provision, sort of evaluate how what you've done compares to that. That would be useful. And are there other topics you want to look into when we meet next week? Okay. All right. So with that, any other?
One item to add to that agenda is the discussion of the eventual joint meeting with the Planning Commission and Borough Council to discuss planning goals for the year.
Okay.
So that would be
for our agenda.
Yeah, okay. Just add that as the agenda to arrange a date.
Okay.
To take for that in the future. So.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that. I totally forgot.
I forgot to mention that when, with the MCPC update, but I remember if they went through. So yeah, that's the, probably arrange a date sometime in February for that.
Okay, for those of you who are wondering, the Planning Commission has requested time on Council's agenda early in the year to discuss the new Council's planning goals for long-term planning issues that they would like us to work on. That's important because we have a new council and the Planning Commission is mindful that we are guided by what council's goals are. And secondly, because we've just renewed our contract with MCPC, which is our consulting planner, and they would like guidance on how to use the time they have under our contract. And so what Tim is referring to is that we would like to spend a little time on the Planning Commission talking about that before we talk to council. So we'll find time to do that. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so if that's okay then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourn. Second.
Second.
Second. All in favor of adjourning and reconvening on January 11th? Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you all.